So, in the last session, I ask you to write down the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word money and a little bit of context about that. That's the beginning of understanding your money story. And the reason that's important, again, is because your money story impacts the way that you use money, the way that you receive money, the way that you make business decisions. It just impacts all of those things. And so we want to really understand where it comes from and also ask, is that money story serving me well? Or do I need to flip the script on that money story to one that will allow me to live a more prosperous life? Few examples. And I've got many from the coaching clients that I've worked with over the years. If a client has a money story that has been rooted in scarcity, a real lack of not only wealth, but money in general, like really scraping by. There's this value on getting by on what you already have. Never even allowing yourself to think that you should buy new, or just when you've grown up that way, there's this like, how can we just use what we've got and really keep things small because that's all we had. And that is noble. I have absolutely no shame. I grew up in a mobile home on an acre of land on my grandparents' farm with my mom and dad. Very meager beginnings. This is not about opinions about those things. This is not about character, morality. This is about how we see money. Because in these situations where there have been very humble and noble beginnings, it can be difficult to then see money as a leveraged opportunity in your business. So in one particular client that I was working with, this was her story. And we just kept dancing around month after month that their business needed for her to hire an executive assistant. It just was needed in order for the business to grow. She's a COO. She kept going back and doing more of the work herself instead of going out to grow the business. The time that she was spending coming in and doing some of the executive assistant type job, she could have been using to prepare employees for development, work with clients. Like there was a huge missed opportunity in the growth. And I finally we sat down one day and I said, okay, what's going on? Let's see if there's something in your money story that is causing you to just not take action on this. Because we had candidates, we talked about it. She was like, yeah, we've got approval from her CEO. And she just kept moving around it. And as we dug into her money story, she said, we always just made do with what we had. And because this executive assistant is going to be serving me, I guess I just kept thinking I should find ways to make it work without spending the money. Like polish up those shoes, we've got hand-me-downs. Like it just was so embedded to find ways not to spend money, that spending the money on that, which felt so personal, emotional, and social to her, seemed like the wrong answer. And it was in her subconscious until I stopped the conversations and said, hold on, let's dig into this. It was not even a conscious thing. It was just impacting her decisions, because 80% of the decisions that we make are in our subconscious mind. We don't even really realize we're making them. And this was one of those. And so I want your money story to be something you're aware of, so that you can decide whether it's serving you or whether it needs to shift. Another client who was really feeling the discomfort of her prosperity. She was a CEO of a company. She was making good money, more money than any of her family had ever made. And subconsciously, it was making her really uncomfortable. And so you can imagine if something is making us uncomfortable subconsciously, we will subconsciously do things to move us into where we are comfortable because our brains are always trying to keep us safe. And so if our brain says to us subconsciously, you don't want to make too much money. You know how we feel about those people, which was her money story. In her upbringing, people with money and prosperity were not talked about very nicely. And so she was feeling really uncomfortable about her level of prosperity. And so you can see how if we don't bring this out into the open so we can actually look at it and ask ourselves the questions, is this serving me? Do I need to change my money story? Do I need to change the way I feel about money in order to live a more prosperous life? Then we want to be able to do that. We want to be able to write our own money story. So for that particular client, we dug into why that was true. And her family is a very loving, kind, good family. But because of their lack of wealth and prosperity, they had negative opinions about those people in their small town. And so this client didn't want to be one of those people that her family didn't like. And all under the level of subconscious. And so once we looked at it and I said, what would it mean to make even more money than you do right now? How would you live differently? How would you serve? What would you do with that money? And she's a beautiful human. And she said, oh my gosh, I could give more money. She does wonderful things in the nonprofit community. I could do things with the church. I could fund more education for my children. All of it was beautiful. It was a beautiful story. And so she had to look at these situations and then say, oh, just because it's not where I've been doesn't mean it's not part of my growth. So the uncertainty of it, that sea of uncertainty, filling in the blanks, we had to say, you know what? It's okay to make more money because money is fuel for our story. And that's why we start with story. I'm not talking about the love of money. If you've been following along, you know, I love me some Jesus. Maybe that's not your thing, but in the Bible, it says the root of all evil is money. But what they're talking, the love of money is the root of all evil. What that means is you're not thinking about the story. You're not thinking about the humans. You're not thinking about a higher power. You're only thinking about the money and you love it. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about honoring your story and giving yourself the opportunity to have more prosperity in your life and to be able to do more beautiful human things with that money. As a company, the more successful in the money-making model you are, the more that you can offer to your employees and to your clients. We need to fund our story, whether it's our personal story or our company story. And so I just want us to get really comfortable understanding our money story. I had another client on the flip side had grown up very wealthy, but she also had family that was very humble. And well, humble is not the right word I'm looking for. One was wealthy and one grew up not having much money. You can be humble and wealthy. Work with me. And so while she had grown up with an abundance of money, there was also some people in her family that weren't all that nice. And the people that didn't have much in the larger parts of their family felt some kind of way about her and her immediate family that did. And so she's a kind, beautiful person, and she didn't want to have too much because she didn't want people feeling that way about her. So we all have this money story. And I just want you to discover yours and look at it and ask yourself, is this serving me, or do I need to flip the script on my money story?